Welcome to Think Free with Stephen
and Daniel.
Two brothers breaking down ideas and ways of thinking about this thing we call life. Unlock your mind to explore more than you ever thought possible. Think Free. Yeah, so I think the reason I wanted to, try to chip away at belief is it's not anything new that I've come up with or haven't heard other places. One of the things that I think I can remember from a few years ago was listening to a podcast. Pete Holmes was a guest on a podcast, and he was talking about not believing in a God that would damn you to eternal torture if you couldn't get the mental furniture in your brain arranged correctly. And that stuck out to me because I think belief, the word belief or the concept of belief to me has really been about that, getting the mental furniture arranged correctly in your mind, getting things ordered out, saying, I believe in, from a religious standpoint anyway, in context of religion, Christianity, something as fundamental as the Apostles' Creed starts out with, I believe in, God and Jesus Christ, his only son, and it goes on and on about all these tenets that are orthodoxy or right belief of Christian confessors and have been through for hundreds of years. And so having a system of belief that aligns correctly according to somebody else's standard is something that's always been like a non-negotiable for me. Up until, I don't know, a while ago, deconstructed and all that, jumps into that. So what do I believe? What did I believe? What do I believe now? Like all that's upended, but then there's this whole idea about just talking about belief as a concept and what does it mean to believe and why do we put so much emphasis on belief and should we really be held responsible for the things we believe or don't believe? And can we even get like credit for it? Like if you're able to believe in God or Jesus or Allah or Joseph Smith or anything else, do you get credit for that? And should you be condemned for not believing in something? Like, can you really control it? So I'm just trying to like work through what do we as humans really have a capability to believe? And why do we believe something? Why did we wake up one day and not believe in the existence of God, and then because of experiences or exposure or crises or whatever, we then believe in God? Or vice versa. We used to believe in God and now we don't anymore. Like just trying to kind of peel apart the mechanisms of how that happens or what changes.
Yeah, I think when I was thinking about your text message, it was just like even stripping down to just being like, okay, well, when our brains evolved and grew twice as large and we're cavemen, like belief that you saber-tooth tiger or a lion or a bear is dangerous and is going to attack you, and then like thinking like, oh, volcanoes erupt because we haven't sacrificed a virgin in a while. So like,
yeah,
seems like belief is believing in something that you don't understand and that you don't know, and so then you're believing some theory or a suggestive idea to resolve what you don't know. And then when the big question of why are we here, how did we get here, comes into play, and we don't have evidence to be able to give that,
you come up with something. Yeah. That's, I think I got to that. Similar point of you can't really talk about belief without talking about the stories behind our beliefs or that we use to make meaning out of things. And the story that we create around why does anything exist instead of not existing, or why do weather patterns happen the way they do, or illnesses happen, or some people are really fortunate in life and other people aren't.
Did Pete Holmes, did he give a sense of, did you sense that he believed in a higher power, but not one that would condemn somebody for not having the furniture correct in their head?
Yeah, I think so. In recent material that he's released, there's definitely subscribes to something beyond the physical. Yeah, a bigger.
And I'm not asking you to
divine
talk
presence.
for him,
Sure.
just, wondering what it seemed like for you.
Yeah,
what he was talking about in that.
Yeah, just not an it or a object that requires allegiance or fidelity to a certain set of principles in order to belong. I know in the way we have, like, if you want to join a club or sometimes work for a corporation or join the military or be part of some sort of exclusive group of people, join a church, a lot of times you have to, make a pledge or subscribe to a statement of beliefs. So a lot of churches have that. You have to sign your name and say, I believe all these things to be true. And yeah, so I'm just thinking about, like, well, do I just decide I want to believe something? Do I believe something because I've been shown sufficient evidence, because I had an experience? I was trying to think about it like on a little less esoteric or a little less spiritual level. I believe when I turn on the water to take a shower in the morning, that water's going to come out of the faucet, or when I get into my car and turn the key, that it's going to start. And I don't really think about that. I wouldn't put that on my Facebook page as like, I'm a believer. I believe in water faucets turning on when you turn the spigot, because it's not a big deal, or it's not something that we've deemed as a story that's crucial to our future of our soul or something like that. It's just whatever. It happens most of the time. And sometimes it doesn't. And, if you turn it on and, okay, there's no water, maybe I forgot to pay the bill, or the pipes are frozen, or there's some explanation for it. And it doesn't necessarily mean I don't believe that cars start when I turn the key. If one time I left my lights on and it doesn't start, I just have to modify my belief now a little bit to say every time I turn the key, the car will start unless the battery's drained or the starter's failed or I put the wrong key in, or any number of other reasons that it won't start. So I can still say I believe cars start when you turn the key, with maybe some caveats or some modifications. But I might not say that until I've actually had that experience. If every time I've turned the key in my entire life, the car just starts, then I'm going to maybe believe something a little bit more unilaterally or without, what I'm saying, like without any caveats or distinctions. But once I have that experience that it doesn't go the way that fits those beliefs, now I have the opportunity to modify that belief or double down on it and ignore it and put my head in the sand and say, I'm just still going to believe. I'm still going to believe, which is what I think sometimes, religious people want to do or insist that we do and call it faith, to say, you can have faith without sufficient evidence, or you can have faith in the face of contrary evidence.
Yeah. I think for me, where it gets a little hard to have those two situations, be able to hear someone say that those two situations about the car and about religious faith are the same, is I would argue that you have that belief or faith that when you turn the key, the car's going to start because you've had repeated evidence, experiences of that specific thing happening. Whereas in my opinion, a lot, if not almost all of spiritual religious belief / faith doesn't come from any experiences, let alone repeated experiences over and over again.
So yeah, you're pointing out a key difference, I think, between different types of belief, which is very helpful. To say we can believe because we've experienced it and then we trust that it's going to be repeated, or we can believe because of, and that's part of what I'm like wanting to explore a little bit. Like, so then, yeah, like let's take that to the next step. Like, so then why do people choose to believe, if we can even say they choose to believe? And that might be a stretch. Maybe we don't get to choose to believe. Maybe we believe because we're raised in that environment, because we feel threatened that we'll lose connection with our tribe if we don't. So what would be, what do you think?
I would think because of comfort. It's comforting. Comforting in having a tribe, being part of it, being protected, having a purpose, having somebody care for you.
Yeah.
I think all of that provides comfort. That's what I would say. I think that it provides comfort for us. So having traditionally a father, quote unquote, father figure that's caring for you, that created you, that loves you, that wants the best for you, and then find a community of people around you that also feel the same way and believe the same thing. Now you're having your tribe that's all going in the same direction and believing in the same thing. And so I think all of that is just comforting to us as a human species,
Right.
community.
So in that case, would you think that saying somebody chose to believe is an accurate statement? Like I choose to go to this grocery store instead of that grocery store. I choose to believe in this God instead of an alternate option. For a lot of the reasons you just described.
Yes. I would say that you do. And I would imagine somebody that is younger or has grown up with that choice not really being necessarily a choice or provided to them to make that choice, and that choice being made for them, it's still a choice with the evidence and the information that's been provided to that person up until that point. Say someone gets older and they experience or hear or are finding out more information than they had when they were younger, just from the people that were influencing them, which most of the time would be their parents.
Yeah.
Then as they get that new information, they're still making a choice just as much as they were making a choice when they were 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, which was extremely heavily influenced by the information that they had up to that time, which most likely for most people, especially in the Western world, was coming from their parents.
Right. Yeah, and the point that some atheists make over and over again is that, you say you're a Christian because it makes the most sense, because you believe in it, because it's true, and it's et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if you'd been born in an Arab country, for instance, that would have been just as obvious to you that, the Muslim faith is the one true faith. And the stakes are so high for religious people that have an all or nothing. You either get it right or you go to hell. You either pick the correct belief system or suffer for eternity. It's basically saying you kind of got to just guess, right? Like if that's what belief is, you got to just guess that this religion posits enough examples of correctness, or there's plenty of proof, or there's, experiences that you can have. And if you guess the right one, then you did it. And if you don't, then you're in trouble. Seem like a fair assessment? Like if we're going to turn belief into just making an educated guess.
I would argue both from my own experience of my personal self and seeing in other people, I would say primarily with Christianity, but I imagine it probably has to do with quite a bit of other religions. It seems to me that it's not necessarily it's a guess, but that person would be stating that there is sufficient evidence in the information that's been provided to have someone believe this one way. And if they don't believe that way, it's because they're rejecting the evidence that's been provided.
Yeah. And that there should be clearly enough evidence.
Yeah, because it is for them.
Right.
And so it just makes sense. And that's what they believe and feel to their core. So it should be enough for everyone else. There's somebody I follow on TikTok that, and maybe a very common statement, but he always talks about when he talks to other people, like that if there is a God and the God's all knowing and all powerful and omniscient and omnipresent, then that God would specifically know what evidence would be needed for me to change and to believe. And so he either doesn't know or he's actively not providing that evidence and then kind of the same thing like Pete Holmes, he's then either he or she is not providing that evidence, but then damning you to eternal damnation forever because you didn't believe. But they know that there's this certain thing that is the only way that will be able to make you believe.
Right. Which then kind of gets into Calvinism. It's a version of Christianity, or a sect of Christianity, mostly tied to orthodoxy, or a belief system, or a theology, I should say, around the idea of predestination is one of their more well-known tenets. And for people who are more familiar with it than me, there's a lot more that goes to it than that. But for the purpose of this discussion, predestination or foreknowledge, it basically says some humans are created to serve and worship God and end up in heaven, and they have been given the gift to believe and to accept Christ and do all the things that you're supposed to do to arrange the furniture properly to earn a spot in heaven.
I've heard about this before. Okay, real quick, and this is specifically Calvinism.
Calvinism,
Is that or would they, like, is that Christianity Calvinism type thing? Or
it's a denomination, more or less.
Oh, like Lutheran or...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, John Calvin is the father of it. And so basically, like a lot of John Wesley, Martin Luther, John Calvin, a lot of these famous names that we know in Christianity that started their own denominations, and they looked at this Christianity and said, yeah, it's close, but we need to add or tweak this about it to make it even more true.
Okay.
And then off of that, now we have all these branches of faith in the Christian tradition with slightly different expressions and disagreements on things, most of which will say we agree on the big things, but we differ on these more minor things. Calvinism tends to be a little bit more extreme and a little bit more siloed off in that one of their major things is something that the rest of the versions of Christianity don't necessarily subscribe to. So they're very distinct in that identity. They say you're either predestined for glory, or you're predestined for destruction, is one way to summarize it. Either given God chose you to what for us looks like random, but obviously God's ways are higher than our ways, so there's some purpose we can't understand. And you were just born to be one of the redeemed, or you were born to be condemned to hell forever, and you can't really change that. And it stems from the logical thing that you were saying, that it's like, well, if God grants us the faith, because everything comes from God, to be able to accept the gift that's coming from God. So if we don't have the faith to accept the gift, then is it really our fault? And Calvinists say, no, it's actually not. It's God's predestination, his foreknowledge. He foreknew and predestined some for destruction and some for glory. And so at the end of the day, if you choose to accept and believe in God, that's because you were predestined and foreknown to do that. And
but that's not free will.
It doesn't reconcile.
So they don't. Would Calvinistic believers believe in free will then?
Not in the same way that others would.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it kind of flips it on its head, because free will doesn't fit in neatly to everything that traditional Christianity says about how the universe works. And so this is how Calvinism, in my opinion, reconciles that tension, because it's kind of goes back to my original puzzle about belief. Is like, do we really have the free will to believe what we do? And if we do, then how much of it are we responsible for? Just like you were saying, if not enough evidence and not enough experience, or the classic question of the Aboriginal tribes in South America who are never exposed to anything remotely resembling Jesus or Christianity or the God of the Bible, according to Western definitions of that, and how many generations have come and gone, never hearing a whisper of that. And they never even have a chance to order the furniture in their heads the way that supposedly the God of the Bible wants them to in order to inherit eternal life. What happens to them? And so theologians have had to come up with accommodations for those kind of scenarios all throughout history to try to fit that into their very rigid
just being
mold.
able to see the trees and the glory of the mountains.
Yeah, that's one accommodation. They should have somehow known, and God probably made some other revelation that we're not aware of. So they had an equal chance as the rest of us, because it wouldn't be fair. We recognize that as modern day humans, the way we would deal with our own children or people we care about. It wouldn't be fair to not give them the same opportunity, but hold them to the same standard of punishment. So therefore, we conjecture God must have come up with some other way to alert them, pricked their souls, given them other things in their culture that we're just not aware of. All stuff that's just like fighting hard or pushing or trying to force it in, trying to make it work, in my opinion, just like doing backflips to get God off the hook for being unjust in that case, because of course God can't be unjust because, you know, that the whole system is based on him being infallibly just. So that's just another example of where the whole thing doesn't pass the sniff test on so many different areas. And Calvinism took it and said, well, if God is responsible for giving us the faith or not the faith or the gift or not the gift or whatever, it doesn't look at us all as just blank slates. And a lot of religions do. They just say we all come out of the womb with the same amount of capacity to accept or reject God, whichever God that is in our culture. And
wow. So some people got the short stick.
yeah, and you don't get to complain because God is omnipotent and chooses, and you're just fulfilling your destiny by being one of the cursed and the damned, and there's nothing you can do to change that. But if you're predestined to accept Christ, then that's, you know, predestined as well. You're going to do that path, and so then you can kind of like get out of it by being like, yeah, so everybody who does was predestined to, and everybody who doesn't was predestined not to, and there we go. You don't have to explain it any further than that. It's kind of cheating when you get down to trying to explain it.
A lot of different religions often push trying to convert people. So does somebody that believes in Calvinism not try to convert people then?
Not in the same way, not in a blank slate. They might say, and again, different people are going to run with this in different ways, but might say, well, if you're one of the ones to be predestined, then somebody has to tell you. So maybe that's my job to tell you. So I'll tell you about it. And if you convert, then that's because you were predestined to convert.
It takes away a lot of the responsibility of the person trying to convert, because it's just
it
puts it on.
It's back to God, whether they were predetermined to or not. But we don't know whether they are until we try. So let's try.
Wow.
And then you just kind of can move on, I guess. And I don't know. I haven't delved too far into it, and I may be misrepresenting some of it, but somebody with a Google search could probably find out even more about it. That's just some of the knots that we get ourselves tied up into, I think, with this whole belief thing, because it isn't clean. It isn't easy. Part of what prompted this for me was a good friend of mine had messaged me not too long ago and was just sharing some of his experience about believing in God. And he sees a lot of people get tripped up when they don't believe in Jesus as God's son. And that's where the devil comes in to take advantage of them and, you know, lead them down a path of destruction. And this was all said with the most genuine amount of care and concern. And so I don't doubt this person's motives or heart or intention at all. It just got me thinking about, like, they were pointing out that this lack of belief or this crisis of belief or this valley of doubt or whatever it was
that you were having,
potentially. I think it was, it was kind of insinuated. I think didn't kind of come right out and say it, but yeah, more or less just trying to gently say, hey, if you are going through this, which it kind of seems like maybe you are, then this is what I've found, and maybe this is a helpful thing. Was basically like, when you're in doubt and you don't believe the right things, that's when you're vulnerable to attacks from evil, Satan, you know, whatever. And it's just, I don't really agree with that statement. I guess I could say I don't believe it, which is kind of a funny thing to say in the context of this conversation, but it got me wondering, like, so what would a person do with that? Would they like say, okay, in that case, I'm just going to believe all the things, that Jesus is the Son of God and that he died for my sins, and I accept him to
believe all of what things? The things that person believes? Okay.
Yeah, that have been meaningful to them in their life, because the more they lean into that belief, the better things go. Like there's an outcome that they want from me, and for them, sort of that's one of the key components. It's one of the ingredients to getting the outcome is having this belief. So then it was like, so I'm just going to just decide to believe this? How do I do that? How do I make myself believe? It's almost like I'm back to the Calvinism again. Of like, if God didn't give me the capacity to believe, no amount of you convincing me is going to. And if he did, then there's not a whole lot that needs to happen. I'm just going to believe, right? So then do I get credit for it? Like in the Calvinist viewpoint, you can't really give a person credit for believing in God, because what else are they going to do?
Right.
You don't give them credit for eating and, sleeping, because like that's what they're designed to do.
Yeah, it's like they just needed the information to unlock
Right.
that, and then they were set on that path.
Then
they were just there, but they didn't really do anything for it. They just received that information
because they were pre-programmed
right
to respond in that way. And the people who aren't pre-programmed to respond, there's apparently, according to Calvinism, no amount of information or evidence or data that you're going to be able to get them to change their mind, because they're just destined for destruction. So that's where I was like, so either I have the capacity, it's all free will, I just get to choose and believe whatever I want. And now it's down to just a guessing game, because there's plenty of worldviews and religions out there all vying for my decision, if that's what it is. And I just have to kind of weigh the pros and cons and make it an educated guess, which then brings me back to the book that you got me when you went on your trip.
Oh yeah,
about shopping for a new religion. And
wasn't that the best?
It's so, yeah, it's like, it's funny, but it's also kind of like sobering at the same time, because the more I go through it, I'm guessing you probably just skimmed it.
I just thumbed through it and was just laughing out loud in the place. Molly was getting just so embarrassed, because I was just like, oh my gosh. And I kept on just yelling out different things from it.
Giggling to yourself and things.
No, not to myself, out loud. That's what I'm saying.
You were holding
just
back.
cracking up.
Yeah. So for people not in the room with us right now, it's Daniel got me this book when he's on a trip, and it's pretty tongue in cheek. I mean, it's kind of meant to be a joke, but they try to take themselves really seriously in the way the book's written, which makes it even funnier. And it's something like The Seeker's Guide to Choosing the Best Religion for You. And it's essentially like it's a consumer's digest for religions or something, or, you're shopping for a washing machine. And so they're going to go through and review all the pros and cons of all the washing machines or the cars, or which neighborhood to live in, or all these choices we make in a consumerist culture where we weigh the pluses and minuses and the cost and benefit ratio. And so it takes, 100 religions, the most popular religions, and goes through one by one and gives you a one-page summary of what they believe, how they started, and then it ranks the cost of conversion on a scale of 1 to 5, how much it'll cost you financially. I think it's difficulty of conversion, how much it'll cost you financially.
Yeah.
And it rates it on a 1 to 5 star ranking. And then how many new friends you'll get, which is basically, worldwide, how many adherents are there? What are some of their sacred texts? What's some of the paraphernalia, perks?
Some of the best were just like the pros and cons, like where it was just like, well, you're going to get this, which is just so true of that religion. And it was like, and you also kind of have to deal with this. It's all just so true.
Yeah, it really lays it out in just a very clear-cut statement. Some of the stuff you wouldn't know about a particular religion until you got years into it. About what it cost you, or what it takes, or what kind of sacrifices you have to make, all across the board. And it just distills it all down into, and so you literally could go through and it's like, and then in the middle, I'll have some little break from and still don't know what religion is right for you. Well, try some of these things. Do you enjoy traveling, or do you enjoy being stuck at home? Because if you enjoy being at home, here's the top 5 religions for you. However, if you like to get out and travel, these religions might be a better fit because they encourage pilgrimages, stuff like that. Or vegetarian already, not a big deal. Well, these Eastern Indian religions are going to be right up your alley. However, if you prefer to eat meat, you might want to avoid this one. It's just, it's all about your preferences and your, sort of your desires and your lifestyle. And it's like, how can you fit a religion into a life? But it also illustrates the variety, and that there's so many out there. And if you want to, yeah, if you already are on this path where you identify with these type of people, here's a religion that closely mirrors that and would be a very low barrier of entry to somebody like you. Or if you want to push yourself and challenge yourself and get a whole new experience, then go over here. But none of, and again, the book is meant to be somewhat humorous, mostly humorous, but it also is kind of poking fun at the idea of any religion saying it's the one true religion, or it's right, or they've got the corner on the market, because guess what? Most of them do say that, especially the fundamentalist ones, which there's even some of them are like, yeah, you can keep your old religion and just tack this one on and everybody's cool with that. Or it's you got to cut all of your ties to everything that you've ever known and be 110% in on this because it's a stinking cult. There's that whole spectrum of where you can go. And that's even a choice you get to make. So aside from this religion, Christianity, for instance, is the true and right religion because I was born into it or converted into it because I was convinced and compelled and I can't help but believe it, which I question, I guess, that's even a thing, really. But other than that, we're just picking. And this is making it's like an extreme example of the thing that we're actually doing. It's like pointing it out. It's showing us, which I think is so clever and funny about us. It's what most of us do anyway, is we pick and choose a religion based on what fits us and our preferences. And this book is just like laying it out there and being like, here you go.
Yeah.
Here it is in one place.
Well, and something too, I think, like with that message that you got from the friend, some of their concerns and their statements, as well as that entire book, it seems like all of that is after someone has made the decision of belief of the fundamental of if there is some higher power that is not just like a essence or a connectedness of things, but like an actual entity,
a subject, an object, someone or something that we can pray to, worship.
And so if someone doesn't have a past of believing that or current believing that, like that book wouldn't really connect probably like with them, you know, and just as much as the message you got wouldn't have any meaning at all for even having a thought about, like, there would be no reason to have a second thought about that message because it seemed like it was something specific about, oh, hey, once you don't believe that Jesus is God's son, then the devil comes in. And that's what you're like, whoa, if I've never even thought about that was true, or that there was a God, that wouldn't even be a beginning step. Like that wouldn't be a belief.
It wouldn't
like I
wouldn't
have to make that choice. I wouldn't have anywhere to land. So like, that's why I was thinking in the beginning, like, oh, like literally the beginning of like humans, like it's back to just beliefs, like, oh, why do I believe that we're here? And it's like, so then you start to think, okay, well, somebody must have made me, somebody must have created me. And then it's like, okay, now let's look at the top 100 different beliefs as to who that person would have been, like in the book, you know, or whatever for it. And then people, then what feels good to them, what makes sense to them, and obviously we don't come out of a vacuum from being born to then being given that book. So it's not like it's just, I'm going to pick all that, which that's kind of part of the tongue-in-cheek portion of that book. But it's, you know, we grow up with or most of everybody in the world grows up with some sense of hearing and seeing different portions of beliefs of why we're here, namely religions. Right.
It'd be similar to being like, okay, I'm finally going to go buy my first truck and I'm 30 years old. I've never bought a truck before. Let me research from ground zero. What's the best truck brand? Well, we can't because we've all been heard ads all our life about how Ford is better than Chevy or Chevy is better than Ford, or if you're a real man, you drive a Ram, or, you know, whatever it is. It's the same kind of thing I think you're saying, right?
Yeah, like exactly.
We've gotten those messages, so we're not a blank slate.
Yeah. Or hearing what, exactly. Yeah.
Or what our dad drives or
Parents,
uncle
yeah,
drives.
yeah, or kids in school talk about, yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've got that cultural impact. So you're not able to just make a decision, which again, then it's like, what is belief other than the soup we're swimming in? Maybe it's the people that are around. It's the stories that are getting
Well, that's what I was
recirculated.
saying. The information that we have up to that point that we're making that decision.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Whether it's
Yeah.
experiences, other people's opinions, all of those things.
Well, yeah, the information that we've had that's seeped into us, and then we're constantly making that decision. So,
Right.
why some people grow up in a non-denominational Christian household and they get to 20, 30, 40, and they continue to get the same information as this person over here that grew up in a non-denominational Christian household. They get to 20, 30, 40 years old, and why you may have one person that still believes the same types of things that they did when they were in their teens, and they have the exact same new information that the other person did, and that person doesn't believe.
Yeah. Yeah. It shows a different path.
They've continued to make different
Right.
beliefs.
And you're saying, why that happens, or you're positing why that would happen, or what would cause that to be different?
I am not saying why that would happen. I'm just saying that I think that whatever the reason is that's causing that person made a belief in something that was different than what the other person was believing with the same information.
With the same information. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's other factors at play, maybe, besides just the information.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just tracking with you, making sure I was tracking.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So you still get new information, but you still are believing the old things.
Right.
And this person over here
Gets the same new
gets
information.
the same information and changes their belief. I think we see that with politics as well. Religion. Like, there's just tons of different things where something will come out about a candidate and the person's like, it doesn't matter. I'm still here. This comes out about, the same thing like what we were talking about earlier. Like, you see those videos about people back in the 60s or 70s, and they're like, what? Yeah, it's crazy. You're not allowed to drink and drive anymore. I don't know what's going on. I just want to be able to have a beer on my way home from work.
Right.
So the same kind of thing. Like, they were provided with more information of that this isn't safe and it's not good to do, but they're believing that it's fine and that it's normal to do.
Right. Yeah, and those things then just take time to change over the decades and generations as new people adopt it. And
which I think, like we've talked about before, like with the connectedness of the world, like with the internet, has even increased those types of changes in society and in humans that went for hundreds or thousands of years thinking, all believing the same way, and then kind of getting, we have more information. This happens over here. This doesn't happen. Or,
Yeah. And always with the impulse and the inescapable need to attach meaning to all of those things, which kind of comes back to the basis of belief. I don't know if we could tell for sure, but I think one thing that biologists have continually stated about the difference between humans and the rest of the animal kingdom is that, so far as they can tell, we're the only ones that have a need to create stories or to make meaning or to have beliefs about the activities in the world around us. And as far as we can tell, the rest of the animal kingdom just responds to biology and does what makes sense to them for reproduction and sustenance. And
like they're not wondering why they're here.
Right. Or struggling with beliefs or changing their beliefs. Or they may adjust their computations about every time I hit this button, I get a food pellet, and then on the third Tuesday of the month that doesn't work or something like that, they may be able to tweak their algorithms about how the world functions around them. But as far as we can tell, there isn't a belief there in the same way we describe belief. So it's a peculiarly human attribute as far as we know. Which to me, I think there's a little bit more maybe humility there about belief in general, just the idea of belief. not any particular set of beliefs, but just that belief is a construct. It's a thing that we need or that we have to have or that we've come up with for some reason. But I don't know that if it exists on a moral plane anywhere, or if it's necessarily good or better or not good or bad, or if certain beliefs are better than others. I don't know if we can make those judgments because of the fact that it is a construct that we've come up with. And to say all that, I'm basically saying I don't believe in belief, which is a funny phrase to utter. So it all gets a little bit chaotic.
So explain that. What does you don't believe in belief mean? I get that you're saying that it's a construct.
Yeah.
I'm following you there, but what do you mean by
just not putting a lot of value or a lot of weight on it as an idea? Again, and kind of in contrast to, earlier versions of myself where what I believed was my defining characteristic or what set me apart or ensured that I would be on the right side of judgment when I died, those sorts of things. So like belief was everything. You got to believe the right things. And if you don't believe the right things, then you're going to suffer for it. So figure out what the right things are, make sure you believe them, and then you're secure. And I'm saying probably a newer posture to that is just, maybe we overemphasize the importance of belief because we're meaning-making creatures, and that's just what we do, but it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, what I believe or what I don't believe. So that's all, just a different posture.
I would challenge that meaning can exist separate of belief.
Oh, okay.
So I don't think that apes sit around thinking about the meaning of life or the meaning of why they're here, but I do think that they have belief, and maybe not an ape, maybe something that's not as much of an apex predator, but maybe a rabbit, that the rumbling in the bushes, they believe that could be a predator coming towards them.
Okay.
Because it seems to me that belief most likely stems from survival. So you believe that you need food. Like if we think about animal kingdom, animals like because we're animals, our entire existence is about staying alive and creating more of ourselves. Like that's like a core.
Right.
And so we have a belief that mating will continue our line. We have a belief that breathing will keep us alive. We have a belief that we need to eat to be able to survive, that we need to have clothing or stay where it's warm or get sleep. Like, so it seems like belief, and that's coming a lot of that instinctually and from experiences. So, and passed down from, I think, people that or elders that have had those experiences, passing those down.
Right.
So that's why I think it seems like it's different than meaning.
Yeah. And I think maybe what you're saying, I'm using like belief, maybe trying to parse out the capital B belief and lowercase b belief. And like turning on the car would be like lowercase belief, what I mentioned earlier. And then capital B belief would be the meaning stuff that you're talking about. Like there's just stuff that we believe will happen in order to survive. Obviously that we put food in our mouths and we're not going to be hungry after we finish eating. We believe that, right? So those are more of those fundamental lowercase b beliefs that I think would probably be a little bit more common to the rest of the animal kingdom too. It's the meaning-making capital B beliefs that we choose or don't choose or are destined to believe or not believe. I think that I'm saying what make us different. And that probably from what we can tell, the rest of the animals don't. aren't burdened by, or don't suffer under, or don't have to deal with or reconcile with, or something like that. Are we saying the same thing, or is that still different than what you were pointing out? Not that we have to agree. I just want to see.
Yeah. I guess I'm trying to think of what other capital B beliefs or meaning you or that would be referring to outside of why are we here and how did we get here?
I think they would be some of the fundamentals that drive our society. For instance, a capital B belief could be men are superior to women and therefore should always be in charge, and women should be subservient. It could be a similar type of distinction between people with different skin colors or different ethnicities. It could be that all life is meaningful and inherently valuable, and all humans have an inherent dignity that's endowed by their creator. Therefore, taking of life is always wrong under every circumstance, because I believe that human beings are intrinsically valuable, just to name a couple that come to mind. So,
okay. So like, would that capital B belief be synonymous with like morals and values?
I think that's where those would come from. Yeah. Would be that belief in, like, if you took a moral or a value or a law and you worked it back to what's the fundamental thing that I believe here, then that's where, that would be like the kernel from which those arise. So if a majority of a country, and especially a newly elected ruling party in 1930s Germany, believes in the superiority of the Aryan race, then that belief is going to trickle down to all those other things you just said.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I get you.
Or now in much more modern times, that all lives matter versus Black Lives Matter, or whatever those different values are that people then start movements off of.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Again, and most of this for me started out with, it still kind of revolves around religion, because I think that tends to be the thing that gets the most conversational traction for being mission critical to our very existence, is if we get the religious beliefs right, at least for the people who participate in that fundamental structure, like you mentioned, that there is a God, a someone out there who expects us to align our furniture with the way that is true, according to that, version or definition or something. So,
yeah.
So do you believe this was a good place to start then?
It's a great place. Yeah, I do. Wholeheartedly.
You've been convinced.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we scrambled some brains out there a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fun.
All right.
Until next time.
Until next time, which hopefully won't be a year.